Hey, thanks for joining me. We're looking at Wildcats number 50 today. The last issue I looked at was like issue 31, and I'm making the jump straight up to 50. Why? Because I didn't collect the issues in between. I kind of forgot that I didn't collect them, and I kind of had to go back in my memory and try and remember what exactly happened. Because it's been forever. I mean, this book is published 98. So, been a minute. But the last issue I did a video on, issue 31, it was the last issue that Travis Charest drew. And I was all in on his art. I was kind of a mega fan of his work at that point, even though it had an incredibly frustrating lack of presence in the book, meaning he very quickly, as his art developed and it got more detailed and more interesting and more dynamic, he drew less and less. He became known for not drawing fast and meeting deadlines. So they had a bunch of artists always filling in either portions of a book that he draw or the entire thing. But I remember at the time, whenever I would get an issue of Wildcats and look at it, I'm like, oh my God, his art is so good. And it made it worth it. But issue 31 was the last one that he did. And at the time, there's a lot of comic books being published. And, I was out living on my own. I had a roommate and didn't have a lot of money. And as was the case with me, my entire life of collecting comics when I was a younger teenager living with my parents or even grown up and living on my own, money was kind of scarce, so I had to pick and choose. And if I did not love the artist drawing him, even if I was into the story, I'm not going to collect the book. And I was enjoying the story. Alan Moore was kind of a relatively new name to me at the time. I didn't understand who he was and what his relevance was at the time. But I get it now, obviously. I've kind of understood his relevance for a long time. But I didn't get to read Watchmen for many years after the fact. I just heard this name. Alan Moore is amazing. And there was all that hype about him writing Spawn. And, it was just a name that was out there. I didn't know anything. But I was enjoying his Wildcat stuff. But like I said, once Travis Charest took off, unfortunately, I was done too. And so I missed big chunks of the story. I still have never read them. I don't know what the issues had going on in between 31 and 50. But when issue 50 was announced, it was put out there that this is the last issue of the run of volume 1 of Wildcats. And at the time, I kind of didn't care. I was like, well, all right, because they're doing volume 2. And that was going to be Travis Charest drawing it, full-time art duties, and it's going to be a whole new direction for the team. And I had honestly kind of even though I was kind of enjoying the story that Alan Moore was doing, I wasn't super into it, enough. I didn't care that the concept was ending, but I was curious to get more Travis Charest art. And if we wanted to do Wildcats, let's go. So again, at the time, I didn't care too much. Looking at it now, there's a little bit of as I'm getting older, I myself am approaching 50 years old, and these things from my youth, when I was just a young 22 or 23-year-old guy, all kinds of life ahead of me, good things, bad things, it just feels like a million years ago. And seeing something that was this is the end of something that was so important to me when it started. Image Comics getting going, the first issue of Wildcats. I was so completely all in on Jim Lee's work. I was there for his Uncanny X-Men run. I was there for the X-Men run. I like his own title, his own characters. I could not wait. I couldn't believe how awesome this was going to be. And the excitement at the time kind of muffled how kind of uninspired and uninteresting the stories actually were. And there were varying degrees of success with stories as things went on. They brought Chris Claremont to draw some stuff, or to write some stuff. And it wasn't that great. And then you had James Robinson, you had Alan Moore. It had ups and downs, but I don't know. I look back on it now, and there's just a little bit of nostalgia for me, going like, oh, this is the end of something that was so important to me as a kid. And as I've been doing this channel, I'm going through with multiple titles, covering every issue. Like I'm covering every issue of Savage Dragon. I'm covering every issue of Cyberforce, of Youngblood, of Spawn. I don't know that there's a lot of channels out there that do that. Some people could say it's kind of stupid. Like you're going to cover every issue. For me, it's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting to go through them one by one. I've had a lot of people say they kind of enjoy the nostalgia trip down memory lane, looking at all these old 90s comics. And, I'm looking at them through the lens of a grown adult now, and how most of these things do not hold up story-wise. There's very few of these things that are like actually interesting, later in life. They don't read very well. But that being said, it's still kind of important and fun to me. The cover, big double cover of the Wildcats crew, I guess as they sit currently in the book. It's just weird to look at Jim Lee art and go, I don't think he gives a shit. I don't feel like this is something that his heart was into. Spartan's in this boring new outfit. Majestic kind of looks like Majestic, but it's never been a great costume design. I've always hated Warblade's outfit, and it's changed here, but they somehow made it even fucking stupider. Like, I'd take the original design over this. He's got this weird, beefy, giant football helmet he's wearing. He doesn't have a stupid ponytail. He doesn't have the stupid big pipes. Like, it's been streamlined down, but it's even dumber. Savant just looks like her. Grifter looks like same old Grifter. Zealot, I mean, they put more clothes on her. She was a lot more naked when the book started. I thought she had long hair. I don't know why it's short again. It's just boring. It's uninteresting. I guess that's supposed to be Jacob Marlowe, but why does he have dark hair instead of gray hair? And then Maul just looks like a boring version of Maul. It's just not very inspired. But again, it's Jim Lee, and Jim Lee at kind of half strength is still better than most, so, what can we say? So this book is broken down into 3 stories, 3 sections. First one is James Robinson. He was the first writer brought on when Jim Lee left the title. Him and Brandon Choi took off to go do whatever the fuck. I don't even know what he left to go do. I think he left to take a break. And then did he come back and go do The Heroes Reborn? Who cares? But yeah, pencils are Jim Lee, Scott Williams. The second story is The Last Goodbye, written by Brandon Choi, with pencils by, Brandon Choi and Jonathan Peterson. Pencils by Ed Benes, inks with Alve of JD. I gotta say, that center story, could not care less. Tried to read it, couldn't get into it. It's the art I don't like. I like Ed Benes, but he's doing like a Joe Mad, Roger Cruz kind of rip-off art style. It's very detailed. There's lots of backgrounds. There's lots of figures. There's lots of, good drawings in terms of people in regular clothes rather than just superhero stuff. Like, Ed Benes is definitely talented, but when he's doing a Joe Mad rip-off style, which is not what he is now, go look up his art now. He's unbelievably good. He's more of a hybrid between Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri in a way. But that story, did not care about. And then the last story is written by Alan Moore with pencils by Travis Charest, and then inks by JD. Ironically, the story I kind of like the most is this first one. It's not brilliant, but it's something. No interest in the second one. The last one, even though Alan Moore wrote it, it's clever, but I was just there more for the art. But as a wrap-up to Wildcats, this is kind of a disappointment. I was kind of expecting some kind of like a big nostalgia trip, kind of a revisiting the greatest hits, all these things that we've done and all these things that we've experienced. And it's just kind of a couple of stories of things happening, and then the end, Wildcats is over. It just kind of fizzles out like a bad fart, and not that interesting. But I do kind of like this opening story. Again, I'd missed a lot of content in between, so I was kind of curious as what was going on with Spartan and Voodoo. I like that Spartan's at least in kind of his original outfit, This redesign thing sucks. I don't think it's better. I never thought Spartan's original outfit was actually that great. But in retrospect, looking at this thing, I like his original one better. But they're in, like, obviously it looks like some kind of like underground train track, probably a subway area. Voodoo's lying on the ground, and Spartan, he's like, hey, are you all right? Holy shit. It says you were falling really fast. She's like, I'm fine. So then we get into this spread with multiple face shots. And I was looking at this thinking that maybe this was kind of a copy-paste situation. And with most of it's not, actually. Like, these shots of Spartan, like here, 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 I guess. The ones of Spartan, these are. This one's different. The mouth is different. But the shots of Voodoo, the drawings are actually different. I mean, her head is pivoted down, and but then it's up. But then the eyes are looking different directions. The mouth is in different positions. Even the actual ink lines on the drawings themselves are different. So it appears like Jim Lee actually redrew every one of these faces. And I kind of wonder if he did like a base drawing of the face, and then he'd lightbox each one where it's in the same basic position, and then he could adjust the eyes and the mouth, and then it's re-inked as an entirely new drawing. But these are not all cut and paste, like these two probably are. Anyway, it's just kind of interesting. But in terms of what's going on, like I said, this story is the one I kind of like the most, because they kind of address a situation between Spartan and Voodoo that's existed since the very beginning, which is she kind of had a crush on him, and there's always this kind of like, are they going to get together? Is the young stripper girl gonna fall for the android robot thing, and can they have a relationship? It's kind of weird, but whatever. Vision and Wanda have been doing it for decades, so it's not so strange, I guess. But they've been through all kinds of hell and back and adventures and drama and battles, and they've kind of changed. And so they actually address that and kind of give that relationship a certain amount of closure, because it had long since been kind of forgotten. Spartan's mind had been uploaded with some other alien warlord consciousness, and he turned into a different guy, and he went off and was like making out with Zealot. And so that made Grifter mad, that made Voodoo mad. It was all kind of a bunch of back and forth. But now that consciousness of the John Colt was the name. It's been removed and absorbed, and Spartan's mostly back to the being that he always was. But she's kind of explaining how she's changed, and she wants him to understand. She says, when the Wildcats, when we got back from space, she went back to New Orleans on her own, which was an Alan Moore written mini-series. I don't know how many issues it was. I've only seen, and I've reviewed on the channel, the first issue. But she went off to New Orleans and had some life-changing adventures. But she was saying here how she doesn't feel like she fit anymore after everything that's gone on and the shit that went on when they went into outer space and went back to their home world. She didn't like herself, and she didn't feel comfortable with the crew. So she took off and left and went and had an adventure in New Orleans. And he's like, all right, so you went to go find yourself. And she's like, kind of. That was part of the reason I left, but the other reason was because of you. What we had starting, you and me, it was good, but then it was over just super quick. She's like, just like that, you were a different personality. You had that John Colt personality thing going on. You were into Zealot. You weren't my guy. His superhero name is Spartan, but they call him Hadrian. I don't know where that name comes from. But it's like his regular name, even though he's a fucking robot. I don't know. But she explains how he's like, you were my knight in armor. And she's like, did you know that? Admittedly, your armor was polymers and wiring and synthetic tissue instead of steel. But still, I felt safe with you. And you weren't a man. You were better, more perfect. And she goes on to describe that her childhood was terrible. She kind of implies that her stepfather probably abused her. She says she doesn't feel comfortable around men, but she can't let her guard down with men, but with him, she could. She felt safe in a way that she hasn't with anybody else. And he's like, well, don't you mean that you still can feel safe? Like, why are you telling me like this is all in the past? She says, when I went home, I realized how much I had relied on you too much. If I'm to exist in the crazy worlds of good guys and bad, I can't be the scared girl in the corner getting by on half-learned coda training. I needed to find my own strength. So Spartan's like, well, sure, but that doesn't mean we can't resume what we used to have. That John Colt part of me is God is gone. But at least the bad part is, I know who I am now. It's true, I'm the sum total of a lot of consciousnesses. Colt, Jan, Cole. I've been brought together now. I'm my own man, and I'm the guy you first encountered and saw something that you liked. And she's like, I hope so. I like that idea, but the fact is, things won't be the same. Not how they were, at least when it comes to our lives as Wildcats. She says, I'll no longer be able to hide in your shadow. And so she kind of gets cut off. As she's starting to explain to him what's going on with her and how she's changed, a voice from behind them speaks up. He's like, typical heroes. And then there comes giant lava monster. His name is Slag. One of the boring bad guys. I think he was part of this group called the Troika, something like that. There was Attica, which is a robot. Slag is a lava monster. And there was some other guy. They were just incredibly boring. Not really interesting, never really fleshed out. They're just monsters for them to fight, which is what we get. We got to have some action. So, Spartan charges up his weapons. He shoves Voodoo back, tells her get out of the way as Slag punches him. He shoots and he misses. And he's beating the shit out of Spartan over here. I actually kind of really dig this shot of Voodoo kind of standing there and the coloring kind of with the cool tones on her to separate her from the background elements. I actually kind of like this whole spread for, Jim Lee modern-ish art at the time, back in 98. But she's like, holy shit, there's a train coming. We got to look out. And Spartan's just hyper-focused on the battle, trying to fight this thing. And she's like, you're not listening to me. And then boom, the train shows up and somehow runs over Spartan and drags him off, leaving Slag behind. So now Voodoo has to face him herself. And Slag, of course, just the little girl here, he's like not worried about it. He's like, all right, pretty boy's not so pretty. What can I do with the pretty girl? And I like how Voodoo just kind of looks and gets intense. And then he starts threatening her more because he's like, I'm going to just kill her. It's going to be so quick. It's going to be so easy. Spartan is rushing back and Slag keeps talking shit to her. And she says, she's now talking to Spartan. She says, I'm glad you're here to see this, Spartan, so you understand how I've changed. A moment ago, I told you I went to New Orleans to find my own strength, and I found it. And she does some kind of magical energy burst thing. Though, again, when I read this, I hadn't seen the Voodoo miniseries yet. I didn't know what happened to her. But she can do something. Blast Slag. It looks like it's erupting his guts. And then he's just on the ground. Left is just a human body. I don't know if he's a human body underneath a lava flow. I don't get it. Doesn't matter. She defeated him is the point. Spartan's like, well, yeah, I guess you did. He says, I'll radio some people to come clean this up. What did you do anyway? She's like, magic, a conjure, which sounds like something Alan Moore would give her. She says, I have a gift for it. Maybe it's my innate aptitude for it is part of my alien powers that I have. But she says, but I just want you to know, I need you to understand, you don't have to protect me anymore. So Spartan is understanding that she's grown and she can kind of protect herself. She doesn't have to rely on him anymore. He's like, all right, I'll try to understand that. I've kind of grown used to it. He's like, will you try too? And she's like, well, try what? He says, to look upon me again as the person I once was. She says, my knight in shining armor? Sure. Truth is, part of you will always seem that way to me. The only difference now is that every time you go and save me, I'm going to go and save you right back. So James Robinson wrote a story that just kind of, I like the small human element of it, where he gets into this vague relationship between these two and how they started something and they've gone through adventures and they've grown and then grown apart and have a real kind of heart-to-heart conversation. It's not super deep, but it kind of gets into a little bit of human connection. That's one of the few times I'm like, oh, okay, I kind of appreciate that. I like what they're getting at. It's simple, it's done, it's over. So now we're on to the next story. This is the one that I was talking about, that's drawn by Ed Benes. And again, this art style, like, there's all kinds of background, great understanding of perspective and building textures and background details and people in regular clothes. Like, he's super talented, but I'm just not into it because it just looks like a Joe Mad ripoff style. And I I don't know why. I don't care. And also, it's a Brandon Choi story. So now I really super don't care. I don't care what's going on with any of these guys. Um, I don't know why Grifter's wearing like a mesh shirt under his jacket. I don't know if he's at some gay rave club and we didn't know about it, which is fine. But I mean, look at this pointy nose shot down here. That's so a Joe Mad thing. And it's this is not how he draws anymore. I guess also I didn't pay attention unless I missed it. This is his brother, Max Cash, and he's been a major part of the story for ever since Alan Moore took over. And I guess he dies here. Well, I was actually kind of surprised. I'm like, oh, he dies, and so now Grifter is on a headhunt to go start murdering people that murdered his brother. And so, you know, I don't care about the story because Alan Moore set up all that stuff, and Alan Moore should be finishing it off. So I wasn't into it. The art's great, but for some reason I'm just not connecting with it. I'm more into a Jim Lee, Travis Charest type of thing. At the time I was not into Joe Mad's art quite yet. I don't know exactly when it was they started the Cliffhanger line and Battle Chasers, but that's when I really got into it. But anybody that's doing like a kind of a stylistic ripoff of Joe Mad, I'm not interested. I don't really want to see it. It just doesn't affect me, you know. Doesn't connect with me. So, yeah, whatever. Grifter's on a murderous rampage. Again, Ed Benes is doing good work in terms of putting in everything that the story needs, everything that the art should have. It's fine. But, yeah, it is interesting that they did kill off Max Cash. Did he ever come back? Has he been dead ever since this? Anyway, on to the final story. The one thing I have as a minor complaint on this story is that the coloring is by Alex Sinclair. Yes, but I feel like it's too dark. Too much of this art is hidden. And it kind of makes it hard to see because I want to see with clarity the hyper fine rendering drawing that Travis Charest does. He does such a fantastic job on this stuff. And I was mostly here for this. And yes, it looks great, but the coloring's a little bit dark. I don't know if it looks the same through the camera as it does to my eye, but I kind of feel like the coloring needs to be brightened up a little bit. But the kind of the home team, the characters that Alan Moore's been writing and seems to be most interested in, they're all hanging out. The moral, the point of this story is that in the comics, there's been this alien creature. They call him Mr. White. He's like this alien lizard shapeshifter who could morph into anybody, but for some reason he gets his form meshed with the building that the Wildcats are in, which is why Grifter's sitting right here. And there's some cut and paste elements to this art. Like these two pictures of Grifter are the same, but the background characters, they are different, but the background elements themselves is the same. So I'm guessing if Travis Charest drew these as different parts and then they stitched him together in the computer, like he drew the figures separate. I'm not sure how that would work, but I'm pretty sure Travis Charest did not redraw these backgrounds every panel. I bet he drew them once and then they just repeated it, but then all the characters move. However that works. But the point is that this Mr. White, which we don't know that's who he is part of the building now, and now it's morphing like he could do. He was a shapeshifter in like flesh form, but now he's a shapeshifter in building form for some reason. And they're like, holy shit, what the hell is going on? The buildings come alive, it's grabbing onto them, and then it actually takes the form of like Maul, the character from the Wildcats, is grabbing at them, and they're like, okay, this is really weird. They're shooting at it. It's not really affecting it. They're like, okay, this is really weird. Only Travis Charest could do a silhouette of a face and have just the eyes and the mouth showing and have it still look kind of awesome. Like, for some reason, somehow that still looks really cool, even though it's like a shortcut to get out of a panel really fast. I still kind of dig it. But this is one of the things where at this point, I wasn't exactly aware that Majestic himself, like Alan Moore made him into something interesting. He's like Superman with hyper super intelligence, just tuned up to 1 billion times. They're fighting this machine thing, and then suddenly Majestic gets an idea, and he takes off. He's gone. And Grifter's like, where the hell did Majestic go? And then Majestic comes back instantly. He's wearing some like overalls and a cap. He's got this big giant machine on he's wearing. He says, sorry. He says, I'm afraid that building this device, I had this device I have, I had in mind took several nanoseconds longer than planned. What happened was about 12 thousandths of a second into it, I had to scrap my original design and start again from scratch. So he's apologizing for being late by less than a second. He just took off, boom, built this machine and comes back, and this is what he's going to use to defeat the shape-shifting wall building monster. So I didn't know that Majestic was like that level of fast and speed and brilliance, but it makes him really interesting. Again, the art looks fantastic, but man, is that coloring so dark. Just hiding the art. It's kind of frustrating. But yeah, Majestic shows up, and the machine it seems to me like it acts like kind of like a vacuum, and it sucks the alien material out of the walls itself. And they have him. They even are like, dude, this is Mr. White. That's the shape-shifting alien thing. He was in jail, but when we had this jailbreak recently and all these other people got away, we all just kind of forgot about him because he disappeared. We thought he just took off, but somehow he meshed with the physical material of the wall. And they're like, how the hell did that happen? We don't know. We're going to have to hold on to him and try and figure it out. And then part of this story is Savant reading a letter. I think it's from her sister Zealot, just kind of making amends to her sister and all this shit. And we get kind of a nostalgic picture shot of the original Wildcats and Majestic for some reason. And it just ends kind of right there. Isn't it great? Love the layout and just the art from Travis Charest. It looks fantastic. But that is it. That is the end story of Wildcats. Like, it's done. The volume 1, this big deal of a comic, is just over. And I'm like, that was it to end the series? I don't know. I would have done it a lot differently. Not super thrilled with it. Like, it's all fine. It's just kind of like another issue. And they're like, oh, by the way, it's done. Jim Lee, however, talks here. He talks about how it's crazy that they're on issue 50 already. He kind of goes back and forth about how way back in 92, they had the pages spread out on a ping pong table. And the lettering was being done, pasted up on the original artboard with rubber cement as they were going over it painstakingly to make sure there were no errors. And then Jim Lee talks about how he recalls vividly he went to his local 7-Eleven just to experience the thrill of seeing his own comic on the spinner rack with amongst all the books from the companies he's already worked with before. He says, for these reasons and many more, Wildcats will always hold a special place in my heart, in addition to being a watershed event in his professional career, which that all makes sense. I do kind of feel like Jim Lee kind of like, this is important to him. It was a major milestone, all this kind of cool shit, but I don't feel like Jim Lee really gives a shit about the Wildcats characters. Like, they're not precious to him. It's just a thing he did that was a monumental moment in his life. But it's not like how Eric Larson is super precious with Dragon. Like, that is his baby. And McFarlane is basically the same way with Spawn. He's going to guide that brand every step of the way. I don't think Jim Lee gives a shit about Wildcats, really. And I guess, everyone's different. Everyone's got different ways of approaching things. But he talks about here He worked with a whole bunch of people and lots of great talents, and everyone should be proud of the work they did. But we're canceling it. This ends, this title, this is the end of the current book, and it paves the way for its rebirth as a new series simply called Wildcats with Scott Lobdell and Travis Charest and Richard Friend. Got to throw his name in there for the inks. He was a major part of that. And there's going to be a great new series coming. I think it's going to be awesome. So go pick up the new Wildcats book here in a couple of months and, on to the future. I'm like, okay, that softened the blow of like Wildcats ending. Like I said, when I was a kid, I was like, I wasn't super in love with it. I just have more nostalgic memories for it now as an old man. But, it's ending, but there's a new one coming, and Travis Charest is going to be the artist on it. So here's a bunch of sketches that he produced with some humorous kind of dialogue thrown in there. Get to see a bunch of kind of color sketches as he works out ideas and concepts. And Wildcats Volume 2 is coming along. I'm excited to get into that. It sucks that, Travis Charest couldn't keep up on the schedule for longer than just a couple of issues. But to be fair, they did hand it off to some other artists, and eventually Wildcats becomes, after Travis Charest leaves, eventually it got into what I think are the best stories ever written for Wildcats. Better than anything anyone else has done before. Better than Jim Lee and Brandon Choi and James Robinson and Alan Moore. These other guys come along. I'm pretty sure it's Joe Casey who writes it. Wildcats became a really interesting comic, and the best stories with these characters are still to come. So there's fun stuff coming for the team. That is the best work that these characters have ever had. So anyway, that is issue 50 of Wildcats, the final book of Volume 1 of the original run, started from Jim Lee and Image Comics in 1992. Onward and upward to bigger and better things for the characters for at least a little while. So that's all I've got for now. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you next time.